The Voice of San Diego podcast is sponsored in part by Manolatos Nelson Murphy, Advertising and Public Relations. As a nonprofit news organization, Voice of San Diego depends on our members, foundations, and sponsors like M&M. We are very grateful for all of our supporters and are happy to recognize them during our shows. M&M is run by Tony Manolatos, Bob Nelson, and Kelly Murphy Lampkin, who bring a vast network and decades of advertising and public relations experience to businesses, nonprofits, government agencies, and campaigns. M&M bridges the gap between clients and the people whose influence matters most. M&M is a full-service agency that helps clients develop their strategy and launch cost-effective tactics. The firm specializes in public affairs PR and advertising, with an emphasis on media relations, crisis communications, community outreach, coalition building, and broadcast, print, direct mail, and digital advertising. Learn more about M&M at mnmadpr.com. And if you like our work and are interested in becoming a sponsor, contact us at podcasts@voiceofsandiego.org.
Welcome to the Voice of San Diego podcast, where we make sense of local politics, schools, housing, public safety, the civic issues that impact the life of a San Diego resident. We break it down so you can understand it and make educated decisions.
Everything that goes into our investigative reporting, the journalists, public records requests, the data crunching, and this very show depends on the support of people like you because we're a nonprofit news organization. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to those of you listening on News Radio 600 Kogo. My name is Scott Lewis. I'm here with my friend Andrew Keatts.
What's up, buddy?
What's up, dude? President Donald Trump was in San Diego this week. Literally every journalist in town covered it. Every single one. I didn't, though. I didn't. I dined with him.
Well, you're not a journalist.
You're
an executive. You're an entrepreneur.
I break more stories than you do.
Oh. I don't know about that. We'll put up the numbers, but
we should have a scoop.
No, you used to be a journalist.
Oh God. No, I dined with him. We got a Big Mac. Like 8 Big Macs.
We plan a lot of things on the show. The Big Mac joke was extemporaneous.
We wanted my thoughts on tariffs.
Where are you going with this?
Well, I just thought it was funny.
It is pretty funny.
Obviously didn't spend any time interacting with anybody here other than the Border Patrol chief, right?
Yeah, we were an elaborate jurisdictional-sized prop.
The border.
Yeah.
He's been describing California in very carnage-laced descriptors, right? It's chaos.
I didn't quite realize we lived in a failed state.
Yeah, carnage, just marauding in the streets.
It's Mad Max.
Yeah,
it's Fury Road.
Here was one of those moments that he had when he's speaking at the border, explaining how bad things are here.
The place is totally out of control. You have sanctuary cities where you have criminals living in the sanctuary cities.
It's just they're hiding.
Yeah,
they're just ready to pounce. And I'm having trouble squaring that with the actual, leaders here and what they actually tell us about what things are happening.
Which leaders?
Like Kevin Faulkner or the former police chief here.
It's like squishy on crime liberals, you mean?
Yes.
A Republican mayor and the police chief.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
The snowflake libs, the Law and Order libs here.
Yeah.
Here, for example, here is Shelley Zimmerman in her one of these exit interviews she did with NBC, describing the state of San Diego's crime.
To look at what those crime stats were in 2017, the lowest overall crime in 49 years, since 1968. That doesn't happen by luck, and it doesn't happen by accident.
So I'm trying to square these worldviews.
Seems to be a contradiction.
We have the president of the United States saying there's carnage in the streets, it's total chaos, and we have Shelley Zimmerman. Yeah, she's a she lived, like you said.
Yes. Absolute snowflake, right? It's just like,
and she's saying this is the safest we've been since my dad went to Vietnam. So, what's the truth? What are we dealing with? It's either on the one side he is not in touch with reality and just spewing some narrative about the area, or
this is going to be a stretch, but willing to say something that's not true,
right?
That he doesn't believe. I don't know. This is just laying out all the possibilities on the table.
But I was honestly disappointed that like nobody just really got into it with him on that, or at least
it's not like they had many opportunities to.
No, but I mean like get on the radio, Faulkner, and be like, "This is a great place."
I know. Yeah.
But I think that what's happened is everybody's just succumbed. It's just like, yeah, I can't do anything to address the rhetoric. It's so there. It's just in its own space that if I tried to get up there, it's not going to make any difference.
We joke, but it is frustrating to think that you can go to the safest big city in the United States of America and talk about what a crime-ridden hellhole you're in, and that contradiction just doesn't matter. It's just not significant enough for anyone to even mention. No one even, like, President Trump gets dragged all day and all night on MSNBC. I didn't hear anybody go, "Hey, dummy, San Diego's really stupidly safe. No one gets killed. What are you talking about?" It's just like,
look, we've got problems, obviously huge ones. We talk about them all day long.
I know. That's the thing. It's like
you've made us boosters.
I know. Suddenly, I'm defending this town that I just normally crap on.
Oh boy. Okay, so
anyway,
I was gonna.
It is a safe place. It's safe. Weird, like there's crime,
huge problems. There's homelessness is just out of control. Affordability. There's the housing is so costly because so many people want to live here.
There's Josh Barro, who you like, national writer, described California's biggest problem is like the embodiment of the Yogi Berra quote. No one goes there anymore because it's too crowded. Yeah. It's like, our biggest problem is that we don't build nearly enough housing to accommodate all the people who want to live in this awesome place.
So I was working on this for a while because he didn't. I was watching that Shelley Zimmerman video, and there's a part where it zooms in on her desk, and there's Barack Obama. He's got his arm around her, and it's a picture of that or whatever. He didn't go to a taco shop. He didn't stand in front of Qualcomm and say, "I saved your largest private employer."
Teed up like a real political opportunity.
Everyone would have had to go. Faulkner would have had to go.
Chamber of Commerce.
And they would all would have been there clapping at this, and he didn't do that. He didn't go to the beach. He didn't go to High Tech High or one of any of the places that stand up.
When Mitt Romney came here once, he went to Nuvasiv and held little miniature spines and like acted like he was looking at them, like it was like some I see you've replaced spines.
Yeah,
he could have done that. Nope,
but the one thing he did, he went to the border and said, "The one border improvement you want, we're not doing."
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Paula Vila at the Chamber of Commerce had a really good point. Was like, yeah, there's like lots of very expensive border infrastructure that we desperately want.
Yeah,
we're very open to you spending billions of dollars to fortify this border, but like mostly it's because we have sewage that closes our beaches sometimes. Could you fix that?
Yeah, help us with these long wait times at the border that's hurting commerce and business. Okay. So I was about to give him trouble and grief for coming,
but it just doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter.
It doesn't. That's why
it's not even something that they need to get their speechwriters together and say like, how are we going to square this issue about you being in the safest big city in America? It's just like, well, forget about that. A bunch of eggheads are going to get upset on some stupid podcast that we don't listen to.
Yeah. So I was. So he doesn't come to California very much. This was his first time. I was about to make a deal.
This is the safest big city in America.
I was about to make a deal out of that. But then something occurred to me, and I was like, well, how often do people come to San Diego who actually represent this area? So like,
oh yeah, this is a
thing.
This is a growing hobby horse for you. I don't know how long this has been a thing, but I've been hearing about it a lot lately.
So finally, I actually did something about it.
Okay,
and I wanted to know how. So Dianne Feinstein
prepared a 25-second podcast clip.
No. Senator Dianne Feinstein is running for re-election. She didn't get the endorsement, and she was
In fact, she didn't even get the most votes in that endorsement chase.
So she was in San Diego for that, the California Democratic Party, and it made me wonder. Well, how often has she been to San Diego in the last 8 years?
Okay,
so I asked. I actually did something.
Like her press office.
Yeah. And they took a
Were
couple
they like,
days.
"Are you a journalist?"
They're like, what's this voice?
What's this?
Wait, is San Diego still in the state? I don't know.
Yeah.
So they wrote back, "Hi, Scott. Senator Dianne Feinstein was in San Diego a few weeks ago." I knew that.
Yeah.
Got that.
Sure.
And she's planning another visit for the spring. Okay.
Great.
She has visited San Diego another 8 additional times since 2010.
Okay. So once a year.
Once a year.
Is that a lot?
It doesn't seem like a lot. San Diego's like the biggest. It's the second biggest city. It's on the border.
It's the third biggest metro area.
Okay. Still.
More importantly than cities.
There's 365 days a year. You represent the state.
That's true. I mean, she works in D.C., in fairness. How often does Jerry Brown get down here?
I bet it's the same. I think there's a whole thing about nobody caring about San Diego.
Yeah.
And I would like to keep scratching that.
All right. Well, you should.
Thanks.
Let's send one email to a press flack every week. We'll get to the bottom of this in a couple years.
One of the people who met with President Trump in San Diego was Rodney Scott.
Yep.
He's the head of the Border Patrol here. And Scott actually said something recently, gave a statement to the court in this whole California versus Trump situation. The Trump administration has sued the state of California for the constraints that the legislature and governor put on local law enforcement and what they can do to cooperate with immigration agents, right?
Yeah.
And so Rodney Scott gave a statement to the court backing up this Trump litigation. He said that these laws would cause something bad to happen. He said in the last 5 years, Border Patrol has turned over 700 unauthorized immigrants suspected of violent crimes to California law enforcement. But that may end. He said that because he can't be sure that local agents will return the suspects once they've served their time, that he doesn't want them to go over there necessarily. They might just take them directly to deporting, to removal.
Yeah, it's so. First of all, I actually hadn't heard that threat too often.
Right.
I mean, I'm interpreting it as a threat, but I hadn't heard that consideration too often in the debate over like SB 54, for instance.
Right. Maya Sri Krishnan dug this up. Nobody had picked this up. She's got good reporters sometimes. They just find stuff
Often,
out.
all the time.
And she found that statement, and it contained a lot of things where the Border Patrol is trying to explain how these laws were conflicting with their job, which is to find and deport people who aren't supposed to be here.
Yeah, but there's an odd assertion embedded in the claim that, like, the importance of enacting a deportation is a more important punitive action than punishing someone for a crime that they committed.
And
that as far as he's concerned, I have my interests and you have your interests, and if I can't be assured that we're going to work together, then I'm just going to act on my own, because what I am paid to do and what I need to do is deport this person.
Yeah, one of the examples that he used in there about how bad this is getting is that he actually got cooperation from a San Diego sheriff's deputy.
Yeah.
And it went well, and they got what they needed. But he's like, I don't know if that's going to continue.
Right, which is interesting because it happened, right?
After all the laws happened.
Yeah, as I was reading through it, I was waiting for, like, where's the horror story of, like, somebody refusing service,
right,
or refusing to cooperate.
And they are allowed. First of all, most of the laws say unless you get a warrant, so you could do that.
Yeah.
But then also, so many of these crimes that are exempted are almost every possible violent crime is exempted, and they're like
even some misdemeanors.
Yeah, that they can deal with immigration on.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I haven't, and I'm not just saying this as a squishy sort of sympathizer of people who come here to work and save their families, but also, like, I have not found the specific moments where this breaks down, this cooperation breaks down. The Constitution says that the local law enforcement, state law enforcement, does not have to carry out federal law enforcement duties. It's a big principle in federalism, right?
Right.
And so where this assumption that they have to act as arms of the federal government is bizarre, and I'm still not understanding it.
Well, and like one of the complaints being that like they're unwilling to execute these holds where
Right.
somebody finishes their time in jail or they're about to be released. Border Patrol or ICE requests a hold. Keep them in jail until we can get there and begin immigration enforcement. Like that's been deemed unconstitutional. Like before this new law, prior to it. And I don't know. I was under the impression that was something that like conservatives cared about.
And they can also get a warrant.
Right.
It still goes back.
But the thing that is weird to me is the desire to be the one that enacts the punishment. That's really I can't turn a rapist over to you to punish them for rape because then I might lose my chance to be the one who deports them.
Right.
Is such an odd principle to me. Like, look, I got in this business to do some deporting, and I'm going to do some deporting. It's like, I do understand the risk of saying like, look, if I turn somebody over to you and they have deportation issues that fall under my purview, I want some assurances that I'm going to be able to work with them. But it seems so odd to withhold it unless you can be assured of that when like what might happen at the local end might be that the person goes to jail for like 10 years.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like it's a more punitive action. It's more important. It seems more important to me that we punish the felony rape than to punish the civil infraction of coming across the border illegally.
Which might cause them, give them opportunities to come back.
Yeah,
Now,
which might cause them opportunities to come back. I think that's the thing that's
maybe
weird
they're
to me.
concerned about mass incarceration.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe this is like it's like we're supposed to depopulate the prisons in California.
I think what it brings. So the other bit of news that came out this week was that San Diego has had one of the largest increases of arrests by immigration enforcement agents. Right. So it's like, what is holding back this enforcement? And here's my thinking. Here's what I think is actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
In order to deport as many people as Trump has variously indicated he wants to deport, or the logical deduction of his theories would indicate the 10, 11 million people who are here illegally, you can't do that with a border patrol that's even twice what it is, or an immigration enforcement.
Oh, I see.
And
even if you could do it with a border patrol that's twice the size, the time it would take to staff up a border patrol of that size would be a bureaucratic nightmare.
So therefore, thus to do that, you have to get more proactive cooperation of local agencies, and that's not just hand them over, or not just share information. That means like literally deputize them as different, and it feels like they're heading toward. You have to deputize to cooperate, to be considered cooperative, not just share information. So I don't know if that's true. That's just something to think about.
And as we've documented previously, there are relatively open channels of information passing between these enforcement agencies.
Yeah, it's not a matter of cooperation anymore. It's not a matter of picking up the phone and say, hey, I got this guy who I think is a potential unauthorized immigrant. It's a matter of there's so much in the cloud that they can see everything happening. It's cooperation is de facto.
Right. Our local law enforcement's license plate readers, for instance, are shared. That data set is shared with ICE and Border Patrol.
Okay, we've got some more interesting local topics, more local topics actually than that to talk about. And we have Antonio Martinez, as candidate for District 8 City Council, sat down with us to talk about that race. But first, our hero of the week. Okay, so most of the time we are fighting government agencies for records,
That's the standard way of things.
but this time we are fighting with some for records. In particular, the San Marcos Unified School District is on our side on a really interesting case. So we have been doing a lot of work trying to find, and vet these cases of teachers who are alleged to have sexually bullied students, right?
Yeah.
And it's very dark, hard work, but we found a lot of records across the region. And San Marcos Unified School District was about to give us some documents related to this pursuit.
Yeah, we submitted a request. They determined that it was a suitable request under the California Public Records Act.
And they were about to do that, and then they got blocked because a lawyer named John Vanderpool, who works with teachers' unions and represents 3 teachers in San Marcos, sued and said, stop that, and blocked that release. And so San Marcos has a choice at that point. Do they say, oh, okay.
Yeah, we can't.
Or do they say, no, we think these are public and we want them to be public? And so that's what they did. And they said, this is from their filing, District Attorney Dean Adams. He said, public agency records must be disclosed unless a specific exemption prohibits disclosure. And he said that the teachers failed to demonstrate, quote, that they would sustain sufficient harm without an injunction to justify its issuance. I think one interesting point about this is that these actions to stop the records coming out are actually raising the profile of the records. We would have gotten them and judged whether they, were of news value or not. And we have a good reputation on that so far. And
yeah, we get lots of records that never see the light of day because we determine for various reasons that they're not news.
Yeah, and yet now we know that there are teachers. For instance, there was one teacher was disciplined following physical contact with a student. I mean, now that's out there. And the GOAT of the week.
You lose! Good day, sir!
The school board, San Diego Unified School District School Board has another election coming up, and 2 trustees are running unchallenged.
Unopposed, yeah.
Mike McQuarrie from the Coastal District and Kevin Beiser from the Tierra Santa area. They have no opposition. And kudos to them. Congratulations. Yeah. But also, this is a very important job. McQuarrie has never had to run against anyone for it. And, whatever the system is set up to disincentivize people from doing it, it's very hard to run a citywide campaign. Right now, the primaries are in the district, and then the runoff is citywide at large. And so it's a very difficult proposition, and they should consider reforming that. This has been the Voice of San Diego in partnership with News Radio 600 Kogo. Stay tuned for Antonio Martinez on the District 8 race.
This Voice of San Diego podcast is sponsored in part by the Downtown San Diego Partnership. As a nonprofit news organization, Voice of San Diego depends on our members, foundations, and sponsors like the Downtown San Diego Partnership. We are very grateful for all of our supporters and will recognize their support during the show. In San Diego's urban core, you can feel a downtown that is changing, innovating, finding itself. A downtown that is growing upward and into the future. To become part of Downtown's story, visit createthefuturesd.com. And if you like Voice of San Diego's work and want to become a sponsor, contact us at development@voiceofsandiego.org.
We're back. The politics report is the best.
Listen, we do this every week. Just sign up for it already.
It's great.
We won't have to sell it quite so hard if you just sign up.
Politics report comes out every Sunday. Go to
those of you who have signed up, we know you're opening it.
Yeah,
you can see that.
The open rate is solid.
Statistically, we know.
I've never seen an open rate like that. It's just, we should talk about it more.
Yeah.
That open rate.
Which is just, to be clear, it's double the rate that's considered very good.
Yeah, it's basically it's the cheeseburger of open rates.
Cheeseburgers are dope.
So good.
Yeah.
In the politics report on Sunday, we had a little scooplet.
We did. I did.
You did. Okay. Good job. You broke that news.
Yes.
That the two things, the Working Families Council. Okay, last year the coalition of the AFL-CIO came to San Diego and took control of its affiliate, the Labor Council, after allegations that its leader, Mickey Kasparian, assaulted and discriminated against women.
Right.
Now, that caused a lot of drama. It took a while for that to happen, but when it did happen, Kasparian and his union, the United Food and Commercial Workers, left the coalition and they joined the union, SEIU, Service Employees International Union, mostly county workers in that local. And they joined they formed the Working Families Council.
Yeah, so there were some other smaller unions that joined with them as well. Those were the two
Teamsters,
largest unions in the group.
Yeah,
FAIR, the
laborers,
bus drivers.
Liuna, yeah.
Yeah.
And so last week, though, when this happened, I remember going to the press conference. This was May. This wasn't even a year ago. I remember going to the press conference, and I asked David Garcias, who is the leader of SEIU, Local 221, the union the big union that joined with this. Without them, I don't know if it really happens, right?
Right.
And I asked him at that press conference, I said, was it a hard decision? Was this a difficult decision to make?
So it wasn't a tough decision. I believe this is going to be the new form of worker organizations around the country, that you have to have a blending of the community and workers so we can really accomplish issues and take care of our neighbors, our communities, our families. It's only by coming together like this that we can accomplish these things.
And that was the big innovation they were talking about, that this was going to be not just a coalition of labor unions, but of all these citizens organizations, which is kind of what he pioneered at this county effort that he's been on, to bring in the ACLU and a bunch of other groups to negotiate their benefits with them, right?
Right.
And the part of the benefits were to actually serve these community groups as priorities, right?
Correct.
And so that was, this whole thing was a big new step. It was going to be a very powerful, they kept talking about how big and how much money it would have. Well, last week, SEIU, or the Working Families Council, decided to endorse Lori Saldana for county supervisor. And the thing is, SEIU is an ardent supporter of Saldana's rival, Nathan Fletcher. And so Tuesday, SEIU voted to leave the Working Families Council.
Yeah, that's correct. So I guess there's a couple things to watch at this point. One is presumably Kasparian and the Working Families Council had some inkling of an idea that this could be a big problem for SEIU. I mean, I knew that this could be a big problem for SEIU, so I'm presuming that everyone in the organization did too. And they did it anyway. And so presumably you don't make that sort of move unless you intend to really get involved in the race. You don't just endorse somebody and send out a press release and then not spend much money on something that threatens an entire coalition that you've just built 10 months ago, right? Mm-hmm. So now the watch is on about just how much money they're going to spend on Lori Saldana's behalf over the next few months.
Because she hasn't raised anything.
Yeah, she's
very little.
And she has, to her credit, in previous races, has been able to do well without much money. Mm-hmm. She last year she didn't come close to advancing past the June primary when she was running for mayor, but she did beat Ed Harris while she was an independent and he had the Democratic Party's endorsement with practically no money. Now I think she's going to have a pretty good sized chunk of money coming from the Working Families Council.
It's deja vu all over again. Okay.
Yeah.
So
this is the story that happened to Nathan Fletcher in 2013.
Yeah. So Nathan Fletcher, Bob Filner goes down.
Yeah.
Nathan Fletcher says, well, I'm a Democrat now. I almost, I had a good run for mayor. I'm going to try it again. Runs as a Democrat, gets some early support, in particular Lorena Gonzalez, who's now Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher. She supports him. A few other things happen. It looks like he might have a chance to get the Democrats rallied around him, right?
Yeah.
And then Mickey Kasparian's upset that this all happens without consultation with him and the Labor Council.
Yeah.
And he goes looking for a candidate, gets David Alvarez, pours a ton of money after David Alvarez, and Nathan Fletcher squeezed out because the Republicans hit him from the right, and the Democrats, the Labor Council hits him from the left, and that's that. And so,
actually, it's the players change, but it's not even that different than what happened to Nathan Fletcher in 2012.
No, exactly.
He seeks the Republican Party's endorsement. The Republican Party goes with Carl DeMaio. They put all of their institutional support behind him. The
Fletcher bails the
Fletcher
party.
bails the party, runs as an independent. The Democratic Party and Labor remain aligned with Bob Filner. They pour money into him, and again, he gets hit from the left and the right, gets squeezed out.
Right, and so Kasparian wants to play that game again. Obviously not pleased with Nathan Fletcher and the whole movement against him.
Yeah.
Goes in, but this time faces an actual consequence to his own coalition because of it.
Right.
And that's the SEIU loss. So does SEIU go back to the Labor Council now?
They haven't announced that yet. I presume would be something that they'd at least discuss at some point soon.
In the rivalry between the Labor Council and the Working Families Council, that would be a big shift.
Yes, that would be a big shift. Well, because, SEIU, with 10,000 members, they bring a lot of money with them wherever they go. The Labor Council, having lost UFCW and SEIU, lost a significant chunk of money. So bringing SEIU back into the fold would really, boost them quite a bit as well.
And it also demonstrates how committed they are to Nathan Fletcher.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, that's the thing, so Lorena Gonzalez, and to be perfectly clear, she obviously has a dog in this fight.
Yes.
But Lorena Gonzalez posted online after this happened. She said, look, you could criticize me for a number of things. One thing I know how to do is run a union coalition. She had done it. She used to run the Labor Council. And she said, everyone knows that standard practice is you defer to the union that has the most skin in the game. So in any endorsement proceeding, if there's one, if let's say MEA was a part of the Labor Council, they're not, but let's say they were. In any city council race, you would defer to MEA's preference. You don't. Some other.
Does that hold up? Because I saw that.
So yeah, I actually don't know. It would be interesting to go back through the endorsement history of the Labor Council over the last 10 years and see if that was the case, but it was a point she made.
Sure. So one of the interesting things about this is Laura Saldana was making the point after we reported this last week that she was going to get the endorsement. She's like, look at my Labor voting history, right? She's like,
especially compared to Nathan Fletcher.
And which is obviously, I mean,
he was a Republican.
Yeah, but also I think it's interesting that basically that the argument is who is more loyal to Labor,
right.
And that's what they've achieved with this. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah,
but also like, SEIU's all in on Fletcher, and he will be really motivated to prove to them that he's going to deliver, right? I mean, he is
beholden to them.
Yeah,
would be
exactly.
Maybe a less favorable phrasing.
Right. And so, the largest union of the county is now banking on this guy being one of the guys that they have to negotiate deals with and such. So that's an important thing to keep in mind.
And so then in terms of the rest of the how this election plays out, one thing to look for is, do these two beat each other up so much that it creates an opening for Omar Passons or Ken Marlborough to rise through? Or does this just become a bloodbath and they batter each other? One of them still gets through, but with, fewer resources available for the runoff, and, they're just damaged for the runoff. How does this play out? Because, you're going to end up having two Labor-backed candidates with a lot of money spending time beating each other up, presumably.
And meanwhile, Bonnie DeManis continues and loses maybe some of the attention if they go after each other.
Yeah, and so now so there's the D4 race aspect of this, and then there's the what's going on in the Labor coalition aspect of this. One possible thing to keep an eye on is what this means for the ascendant Building Trades Council coalition in the Labor Council, if they do in fact gain from all this. If SEIU, for instance, returns, or just if Mickey is marginalized with UFCW and out of their hair to some extent, they've taken a very different tact in City Hall, and not just in City Hall, at Sandag, at MTS, with they're very much aligned with Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher at the Airport Authority, which we reported last week. With this new approach, if they are the unquestioned power center of the labor movement, it could continue to push the San Diego political center in that direction and away from, Mickey was a little bit more interested in going to deal making, and he used to often say that he was happy to sit down with Mayor Faulkner and make a deal, and that hasn't that hasn't been the approach of the other group, really, not really.
There was another development in that county supervisor race. The UT reported that she can't go by Judge Dumanis on the ballot.
Gonna have to go with district attorney.
Gonna have to go with that horrible honorific district attorney.
Yeah.
Apparently, why does she want judge more than district attorney?
There must be polling that suggests it's a more revered term.
And Nathan Fletcher can't go by assemblyman. He has to go by educator.
That seems weird. I have always, in my stories, I refer to him as former assemblyman, not educator.
Because that's the better descriptor.
It's a better descriptor.
We have a Bruce.
So it's interesting that he wants to be known as educator, not assemblyman.
He can't. It's the same problem. The period of time has passed too long.
Yeah, I know, but he wants to be an educator, right? Or he wants to be a former assemblyman.
I would assume he wants to be assemblyman.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't know for sure. I haven't talked to him about that.
And so I guess it's the same with Lori Saldana, who also can't be former assemblywoman.
Right. Exactly.
Seems awfully silly. They're both former assemblywomen.
Yeah. Why can't they just? I guess there's a rule about how much time passes.
It should be based on the highest.
I would be
elected title you ascend to.
What would you be? Journalist?
I'd be journalist, and you'd be
media
nonprofit executive.
No, you'd be media executive,
nonprofit director,
globalist. All right, if you want to hear us, talk to us, give us a piece of your mind, we are going to be at Mike Hess Brewing on March 21st, 6 p.m. for Brews and News. And there's a couple other things you should check out. The I Made It in San Diego podcast. I interviewed a defense contractor in town, or he's just a contractor in general, does a lot of different areas. One of the fastest growing companies in the country. You look at these lists of fastest growing companies, and there's this guy.
They're on it.
Yeah.
I just edited a script that Kinsey put together for that show. It was with about a young hotelier.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting episode.
Really?
Yeah, it was really good.
Good. And
I don't like crediting Kinsey Moreland. Drives me insane. Trolls me harder than anyone in the office, but this was a very good episode, and I think people should listen to it.
And there is also something else that Kinsey produced, which was the episode of the Culture Cast. So look up I Made It in San Diego. Look up the Culture Cast, and she did a good piece about the future of the Comic-Con, not museum. Don't call it a museum.
Yeah, but also we don't know what to call it yet.
Right. Okay, we are joined in the great Voice of San Diego podcast studio, most popular political podcast recorded in downtown San Diego, by Antonio Martinez. He's a candidate for District 8 City Council. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. Very excited to be here today.
Yeah, thank you. This is we continue our series of discussions with candidates for office, and appreciate you coming in. I have followed the politics of your district and others for a long time now. It's been a good run, 8 years now for David Alvarez. You're working to replace him. Tell me, first of all, what do you do in the community? What's your job? What else do you do? And you're also a trustee at San Isidro, right?
I am.
School
yes,
district.
I am. Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for having me today. I am proud to say that I'm the only candidate that's homegrown. I actually was born and raised in District 8, particularly San Isidro.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up with my grandmother in San Isidro, and I also work in the district. I work in healthcare. I've worked in my health center. It's called the Nestor Community Health Center.
Mm-hmm.
For the organization for over 10 years. Actually, 10 years is coming up, my mark. And I have a team, and I help families get access to affordable health care and social service programs. It's a very good job. I love it, helping a lot of people in need.
And are you involved in healthcare, or is it more from the administration?
No, so the organization has health clinic.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of my team, we help families get access to see our doctors.
Mm-hmm.
So we have doctors, nurse practitioners, a lot of social service programs that help families in need. So we help connect the dots in terms of not just health insurance, but social service programs that really can help them overall in their needs.
Okay. And San Ysidro School Districts, you're one of the 5 trustees, is it?
One of the 5, been elected since 2012.
Mm-hmm. And been an interesting run there for a while.
Very much so.
It seems like as we were trying to catch up a little bit, it did seem like you and another member of the board were kind of jockeying for the role of chief reformer, of fixing it up, and it's had some trouble, some scandals with some of its superintendents. Describe to us what you've had to face there and what your purpose and goal is.
Absolutely. I ran in 2012 with the campaign slogan of reform and rooting out corruption.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the blessing of the support of the teachers and classified union since I started. And part of the role really is rooting out not just the corruption in San Ysidro School District, but it's really something that's plagued South Bay in general, not just our district, but also Sweetwater and Southwestern College. And part of the goal was in working hard to clean it up and make sure that we focus and redirect what the resources should be, which is going towards the best quality education to provide for our kids in our community. Right now, we're in the process of hiring a new superintendent, which is huge. Personally, I would want someone who is there for the long run. I think a lot of times, especially when you have small school districts, superintendents come in and go. They use small districts, small communities as a stepping stone for a bigger position. Mm-hmm. For me, I at least in the superintendent that I'm looking for, I really want to make sure that it's someone that's there to stay for the long run and retire there. I think that's something that we need to do, and it's one of my priorities.
You mentioned the word corruption. What was happening that was corrupt?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with administrators taking advantage.
Self-dealing, actually taking money? And
well,
stuff?
when I got in there, the superintendent that was there at the time, there was some couple of issues related to his Form 700, and ultimately, when it comes down to it, a lot of lack of oversight when it comes to making sure that we need to have those policies in place to prevent that from happening again. And making sure that we're there for the right reasons and we're there to, provide the best quality education for our kids.
And so the current vacancy was opened in part because this last superintendent had extremely high compensation, right? At least in part. And I read some of iNews sources reporting on that, and there was some idea that maybe the board was misled about just how rich his compensation package was. Were you aware of the amount of different sweeteners that were included in that contract when you voted on it?
I'll be honest. When it comes down to that, I know it's still in the midst of a potential lawsuit, so I don't know, at least from our end, how much I can talk about the details. But what I can say is that I think part of what we need to do is to hold individuals accountable who have taken advantage of our community, and to make sure that we do what we can to, if there is misdeeds, to get the money back, because the money belongs to our kids and our community. And, to say the positives too, we have come a long way since 2012. We are, as a district, we're positive certified, which was a big deal going into it. I remember going through a strike in 2014 with our teachers. I was proud to stand with my teachers during that time.
Give me some grounding on facts. So how many students does the San Ysidro School District serve?
So right now we have 7 schools and 3 preschools, and we serve, I'd say, roughly a little bit over 5,000 students.
And it's all elementary, right?
It's a preschool to 8th.
Right. Okay. And there's how many people in San Ysidro, the community?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
The district in and of itself is not just San Ysidro. It also includes other communities. It includes Otay Mesa East and Ocean View Hills. But that's a good question. I wouldn't know what to say in terms of the population.
Yeah, I think about it. I'm endlessly fascinated by San Ysidro because it's this dense island of the city of San Diego against the border, removed from the city of San Diego by quite a few miles. Yeah. And so your district that you would want to represent San Ysidro, but also the south part of the city of San Diego.
Absolutely. And to be honest, if I were to win, or more appropriately when we win, we'd be the first from San Ysidro to ever represent the district as a city council, in the city council. And you know what's funny about the district, and part of the reason I'm running, is I really want to make sure we get our fair share.
Yeah.
A lot of times, well, not a lot of times, District 8 has been shortchanged by the city of San Diego historically. And particularly when you look at the South, a lot of the people that live there don't even know that they're part of the city of San Diego. In fact, in my neighborhood in San Ysidro, we don't write, when we do our posts in our mail, we don't write, San Diego 921, the zip code. We do San Ysidro. I think we're the only ones in La Jolla that do that. And,
La Jolla, I was just going to say.
Well, because of that, a lot of times, a lot of the residents that live there don't know that they're part of the city. And because of that, how do we expect them to advocate for their fair share if they don't even know what they're, what they're part of? So,
do you think that should change?
Of course. And I think...
No, I mean, do you think like the way you talk about San Ysidro and the way you label things should change?
Well, I think the way we need to empower our residents in District 8 needs to change to make sure that they also know that their voice is important. And I really want to be that council member that empowers our communities to rise up and really demand our fair share. And part of the reason I'm running is to be that consensus builder at City Hall to get things done. And I think when it comes down to it, a lot of the needs that we have in District 8 are basic needs that a lot of other communities take for granted. What we ask for are not expensive things. We ask for sidewalks that our kids can walk on to go to school safely. We ask for, more improvement on our community parks. We have lack of space. We talk about healthy communities and making sure people are physically active and kids are physically active. Well, how can we expect that if we don't have open space and community parks for our kids to play and be physically active? Mm-hmm. So we're asking for our fair share, and that's what I'm running on to get there at City Hall and get our fair share.
Yeah, and so maybe this is similar to what you just said, but when you say that D8 has not gotten its fair share historically, how do you measure that? What does that mean to you? What have you not received?
Well, I've also, aside from being a board member in San Ysidro, I'm also a proud member of the planning group, and I was also the Recreation Council president for many years, and being part of those two committees, obviously advisory boards, particularly with the planning group, I've had the opportunity to take part in writing and our community plan update, which we recently, I guess it recently was
passed.
Completed. Yeah, passed.
But late 2016?
Yeah. And writing it, having a role in writing it with my community members, a lot of the projects that we are advocating for in that community plan update are not implemented. And this is from the previous plan update, which was in the 80s. So, when we're asking for our fair share, obviously we need a bigger piece of the pie in terms of the budget to complete those projects. And more importantly, we need resources. We need, the plan update serves as a goal to what we're going to reach in terms of beautifying our communities. We list, street lights, issues with, again, community parks, lack of parks. The community plan updates serve as like the goal of where we need to be based on what the community wants. And we're not there. We haven't been there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that, and one thing we did, and I was very proud to do with my fellow members in the planning group, is we put a piece of like a financial cost to each project, which is something that should be a given, right? You advocate for a project and you put it on the plan update, but the reality is that there wasn't a financial cost, that makes it a reality that was associated with the plan update. So for me, implementing that to make sure that you have your project with the associated cost, and then you demand from City Hall that we get our fair share. Mm-hmm. And I can guarantee you, you look at not just District 8, but Barrio Logan, for example, which has the oldest plan update. I believe it was passed in 1978, which is a shame that nothing has happened in terms of talk on what we can do to get that plan update going on again and those discussions moving.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about that in a minute. It's obviously a big issue for the district. I do want to bring up two areas of sort of infrastructure and what else that might be part of this discussion about getting the fair share. One of them is we did a lot of reporting last year about homelessness at the border in San Ysidro and Otay as well. And there's a lot. There's obviously a tremendous number of kids in some of those districts that are homeless, and also what we noticed was there's a lack of investment of affordable housing funds in San Ysidro and in Otay too. And so it seemed pretty clear that we were building a lot of things or services in downtown or in other parts of the main city, but not doing any of that work for San Ysidro. And then the second one, as far as projects go, did they ever build that sidewalk to the high school that everybody was talking about? That we broke that story for a while, and that was a big deal. But it was. But did they ever do that?
You know what? It was so funny because I was actually interviewed by, I think it was Liam Dillon during that time, and we walked it.
Yeah.
I guess the project is still being built. It's been, I think, 2 years, so I don't know how longer it'll take. But
okay, good.
But yeah,
so it's under construction.
At least, there is some type of
there was a
movement.
For those who don't know, there was a dangerous strip of road between San Ysidro High School and sort of the main part. And it was like kids were walking along this ridge right next to a busy street, but no sidewalk, and it was dangerous, and it was promised for a long time. So that's under construction. So affordable housing is still a need.
Oh yeah, and if you look at my school district, for example, many kids are transitionally homeless.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in Willow School, which is the school closest to the border, the stats show that 1 to 2 kids are transitionally homeless. And, this topic of homelessness is hot right now, but I think the focus is, and what it should be, obviously, individuals you normally see chronically homeless, individuals you see in the street. But the reality is that in District 8, there's a significant population, especially in San Ysidro, of families that are transitionally homeless. And they don't look visibly homeless, but these individuals, these children, these students, stay in a car one night. They sleep in their aunt's garage or they're in the couch another night. They stay in a cheap motel another night. And, when you talk about how do we create an environment where these kids have the opportunity to succeed, you can't do that if these children don't have a stable living environment. And for me, the solution, I know a lot of talk obviously is affordable housing, but it's also complemented with affordable housing wraparound services for these families to get back on their feet. The misconception is that, I hear a lot of talk from individuals that really don't know the situation, that they say, oh, these parents should get a job, they're lazy, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is these parents do have a job. A lot of them are working 2 jobs, actually, and they just can't make ends meet because rent is so expensive. And the reality, when you have a situation like that, and working in the health center, I see it day in and day out. I've helped thousands of families that these individuals, a lot of them don't have access to affordable health care. A lot of them, need help writing a resume or, prepping for a job interview, So affordable housing complemented with wraparound services to get our families back on their feet and to make sure they get their opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Barrio Logan for a second. So we covered in depth for years the push for the last effort to update the community plan. The tension between the neighbors and the shipbuilding industry was peaked, and ultimately the shipbuilding industry threw out the plan that had sort of been a compromise among others. At the heart of it is this sort of barrier between the neighborhood and the shipbuilding industry, and this buffer area, and whether the shipbuilding industry or their suppliers and such should be allowed to have facilities on that middle ground. Sure. And into the future, how hard it would be to get those permits. So where do you fall on that, and how would you sort of do what has been very hard for Alvarez and other people over the years to pull off?
Well, my position always stands with the residents of the community, because these people are the ones who live there and breathe there and experience. Anyone can. There are many people that can live somewhere else and make opinions, but I think the biggest thing is that I think part of the problem was when the election to pass this plan update went citywide. I think that a lot of it, the community lost their voice. In terms of possible solutions, I think we need to bring everyone back to the table again. I mean, it's been, how long has it been? 6 years since we've had this discussion, give or take, perhaps more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's now time for us to come back. Let's start working together and let's start finding a solution. Part of what I want to do, and at least something I feel that I'm good at, is being a consensus builder. I think, going in, there's always situations where you have to, be firm with your values, but there also reaches a point where you let your values get away, you let your ego get away, in the way. And I think ultimately, when it comes to, getting something going in Barrio Logan, we all need to work together. Obviously, my loyalty will always be with the people that live in the community, always. But let's start having that conversation again. Let's move.
Yeah. So I mean, the mayor's office had discussed restarting this effort. This was back in October, I think. He said had preliminary conversations about whether we could start the process again. And one of the things that maybe people don't realize is Barrio Logan's one of the smaller communities in San Diego, but out of the entire community, just not much disagreement in 95% of the plan. The density questions, how much housing, affordable housing, all those sorts of things were basically straightened out. It was it was really just one thing that was a sticking point, which was what types of properties should be allowed in that one strip just north of Harbor Drive. And so I wonder, has that dynamic changed? And if that dynamic hasn't changed, that the shipyard has a clear hard line in what they think needs to go there, and the community has their own clear hard line that what can't go there. Mm-hmm. If that dynamic doesn't change, how do you come back to the table and work on something?
Well, I think we have to not just have that conversation, but begin to think about a solution. I mean, the only way we're going to find out if the dynamic has changed is by just sitting at the table and talking about it. Mm-hmm. I think the bottom line is that hasn't been done, and I think that needs to be done. And I think the other thing...
You're saying Alvarez hasn't met with the shipbuilding industry and stuff like that?
No, I don't know. But I can tell you, at least my understanding is that I haven't seen any movement on the progress of the plan update. And I think that's shameful, because you have the oldest plan update in the city of San Diego, a community in need that needs that update as soon as possible, and we need to get back to the table.
Do you think the shipbuilding industry and the residents can live together into perpetuity?
You know what? I don't know. I think that's a conversation we have to ask.
So that's my what I'm
and I'll tell you from my personal experience, and why I relate obviously to the residents of Barrio Logan is living in San Isidro. We also have issues with pollution. I lived by the border, so the wait time at the border led to a lot of my friends having asthma. Luckily I don't, but at the same time, the issue of making sure that, the problems of pollution are addressed. And, we think about the community first, because I think a lot of times, we forget that, especially everyone has an opinion, but we don't ask the people who actually live in the community, their opinion. In fact, that's been one of my goals when I'm knocking on doors. I'm asking people, what can the city do to make your life better, safer? And we're keeping track of that. And that's part of what our goal is.
They are, I guess that's what I was trying to get at too, is like they are incompatible in a lot of ways. I mean, you have a giant industrial operation.
The jargon term in planning is literally incompatible uses.
Yeah, and so I think that there was this weird dynamic in the past of like some people saying, well, you're going to hurt the shipbuilding industry if you don't really protect it. And I think there were a lot of people saying, yeah, that's fine. This has been awful for our community for a long time, and this isn't the right place for it. And if we're going to build all these residences, then the encroachment on the ability of these shipbuilders to continue growing or whatever is fine. And I guess what I'm asking is the shipbuilding industry there something you really want to protect, or is it just not a priority?
Well, I think we need to come to the table, and I think we need to have that discussion again, and we need to move forward to see if there is a solution. Mm-hmm. If not, it's going to remain the same. And the ones who ultimately lose are the people that live in the community, because they deserve a plan update that's not only good, but it's something that needs to be passed. 40 years without having updating your plan, community plan is unacceptable.
So I noticed you got the endorsement of the Police Officers Association.
Yes.
And when I looked at Vivian Moreno's website, she says the first thing that she's interested in is hiring more police officers, getting more police. And is there a pretty clear critical mass of people in your district worried about security right now, about safety?
I obviously living in San Isidro and working in Nestor, in Palm City, Nestor, Otay Mesa, I've seen the great relationship the community members have with Southern Division. I'm on the Southern Division's advisory board, community advisory board, and part of the goal of what we've been trying to do is establish a sense of community policing. So it's not, and I can say the dynamic of, and being a lifelong resident of San Isidro, I remember a time where after a certain hour, I would have to go inside because we would hear gunshots, violence, gangs, graffiti, drugs were prevalent in my neighborhood. And, luckily things have changed for the better. And I think part of it has to do with community policing, this notion where you have a relationship with the police officers. You're not seeing them only for the negative, but you're seeing them at community events. They're involved in like they attend, for example, the planning group meetings. And I think having that presence is changing and should start to change the culture of the, quote, animosity between community and police, which shouldn't be. So
the Police Officers Association has regularly said that the reason they can't do as much of that sort of thing as they'd like is because of where the hiring numbers are. So police officers just got a new contract, and pretty substantial raise.
Yes.
Do you think that is sufficient, or is there going to, in your opinion, need to be more done to try to deal with the recruitment and retention issues that have been plaguing the department for years now?
Well, I think there's always rooms for improvement. I'm happy with what they got, and they deserve that and more, in my opinion. I think part of it, too, is really not just focusing on police, but public safety in general. Our staffing issues are not just problems with, with police. It's public safety in general. And, obviously,
So you mean fire and lifeguards
as well.
911 operators.
Exactly. And, making sure it's a priority for the city of San Diego. I mean, obviously, and I'm hearing the stats, being at the advisory board with Southern Division, seeing how, we have individuals that go through the recruitment process, but then they leave to somewhere else, whether it's a different, the sheriff's department or another, police department, because of not just better compensation, but better overall health and welfare benefits.
Yeah.
So, we need to make sure we prioritize that and make sure we focus on, and again, focusing on community policing is the priority. It needs to happen.
Were you, what did you think about the police search process, the process for the new police chief?
Well, as a community member in San Isidro, I can tell you that the majority, if not all, my community members didn't even know what was going on. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they try to make it as transparent as possible, but I think the city could have done a better job in making that process more transparent and having the community more involved. especially in areas like the south of District 8, where we often are forgotten and we're shortchanged. So it needed a lot, in my opinion, more transparency.
So one person who didn't endorse you is Councilman David Alvarez. He's supporting the person who works for him, Vivian Moreno. Do you think Alvarez has done a great job?
Well, I have worked with Councilmember Alvarez since he started, actually. I supported him when he ran for mayor. I consider him a friend. And I think when it comes down to it, whether or not he's done a good job, I can say that, we all are working hard. And I think more importantly, at least the main thing is I want to go in there being a consensus builder. A lot of times, you're at City Hall, the dynamics of the politics that are there. I don't want to go in, I want to come in as a council member with a clean slate. Don't have any animosity with anyone there. I want to come in and make sure we're all working together to get District 8's fair share.
So I don't want to read too much into what you're saying, but does this mean that Councilman Alvarez has not been a consensus builder and maybe there has been some animosity in City Hall between him and other people?
Well, I can't say for sure because I'm not there, but obviously running against the mayor, when they ran for mayor, obviously that created some type of animosity, and that's a safe bet. But I think ultimately, Councilmember Alvarez has a good heart, and I think he, in terms of the work that he's done, like I said, I've supported him for many years.
So this district has often been described as kind of the center point of, since it's all mostly Democratic, that this is where a lot of the sort of chasm in different Democratic camps really plays out, that there's a lot of unions that divide. The unions always remind us that they're not a monolithic entity, and there's all kinds of different interests. You were quoted by the Carpenters as saying, being pro-union is not just in my heart, it's in my soul. What do you mean by that?
Well, my grandmother, who raised me, is a proud union member. She was she was actually a teacher at the San Isidro School District for many years. And because of that, because of her membership in the union and her years and work as a teacher and her love in education, she was able to when I was born, retire and basically raise me as her son. So she taught me the value and importance of not just unions, but working families and union families. In terms of having a voice at the table, a lot of times, and you see this day in and day out, that a lot of employees, they don't have a voice, and especially if they're not union, they don't get their fair share as well. So for me, unions are in my heart, because not just the teachings of my grandmother. In fact, she taught me. She always told me this. She goes, Antonio, when you run for school board, which I was about to run for school board, he goes, always stand with your teachers and classified staff, because unions are what keep our people safe. She taught me that. So for me, obviously, they're in my heart and my soul because of my grandma's teaching and because of my experience in my school board as well.
So one of the big dynamics on the left has been this whole question. So David Alvarez was a big part of it as well. This criticism of Mickey Kasparian, labor leader with the United Food and Commercial Workers, and he ended up forming a splinter group of coalition of unions called the Working Families Council. And you got that group's support. Was the concerns about keeping those members of that union safe something that you had to consider as you heard about the accusations against Mickey?
Yeah, so I've always supported unions, and that's not been a secret. When my teachers went on strike, I was the only board member that stood with them and demanded they go back to collective bargaining. And when it comes down to every union, the members, for me, it's not about the union leaders, it's about the members. And a lot of the members in every union, doesn't matter if it's UFCW or building trades or, the Nurses Association, a lot of them are people that live in my district, and I need to watch their back. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's about making sure that I'm representing all unions and making sure that I'm the person who stands with union families.
You switch topics, so just on a couple of citywide issues. So one of the things that Alvarez got himself into was he had agreed with a group of people that wanted to regulate vacation rentals. We talk about housing supply and such. He signed on to that plan, and then when it came to a marathon meeting, he seemed to lose his interest in that, or something happened that he lost support, and they weren't able to finalize regulations for vacation rentals. And among the union discussion, hotel workers very hostile to these sort of proliferation of housing units being used as vacation rentals. What do you think about that? Should be regulated, or should they be banned?
Well, I always take it from the perspective of the community. So you have, individuals who, sometimes use it to help pay their rent, which obviously that needs to be regulated. But then you have individuals, or in this case, corporations, that are essentially changing communities. They're buying property for the sake of short-term vacation rentals. And for me, that's highly unacceptable. Especially, we want to encourage individuals, especially in my district, to be property owners, to buy their first home. Imagine doing that, and next thing you know, your neighbor who, is no longer living there, now it's a short-term vacation rental, and then the house next to that is also a short-term vacation rental, and the house next to that is a short-term vacation rental. Next thing you know, the neighborhood that you bought your first home in is not even a neighborhood. It's essentially a short-term vacation rental, I don't know, community, if you can call it that. So in terms of that, I think I'm very, very supportive of doing something about and stopping that from happening, just because we don't want to change communities. And I definitely support our hotel union workers as well in that issue.
Mm-hmm. So perhaps a ban.
Well, I don't know what the solution is. That's something we'd have to have that discussion. But I think ultimately having that conversation on the effects of what this does to communities is important, especially the negative consequences.
We ran a story this week about a marijuana dispensary in San Isidro that serves a great number of people who actually come over from Mexico. Do you think that the marijuana, the cannabis industry, and the regulations that have been set appropriately?
Well, I'll go back to my argument. I think District 8 has always been shortchanged. And this is a particular issue that, for me, I support medical marijuana. I support recreational marijuana. But I think what needs to happen is that we have to be more mindful on where we put these locations, the stores particularly. In particular, San Isidro, we had a serious issue with community members being upset with the location of a particular store because it was literally next to essentially a store that sold the uniforms for the kids' school uniforms. So, you know what I mean? I think when it comes down to it, to answer your question on whether or not the policy has been appropriately regulated or passed right, I honestly think we have a lot of work to do, and be mindful. And obviously, when it comes down to it, and I say this joke, as a community member, if the first medical marijuana, store was put in La Jolla, imagine what the residents would do, and obviously, be not be happy about it. But one of the first ones was in San Isidro, in Otay Mesa, in District 8. In fact, I think we are the one district that had them all first. There's 4 per district. So, using us it just seems like the city always uses us as a guinea pig for, their policies and seeing what happens. And the reason in part I think this happens is because they know the community members are not going to be knocking their door at City Hall and demanding change. And part of the problem is that, our community members, they work for a living. So they have to be, at work while these meetings are held. So they know that a lot of the problems that we have, we're just going to keep quiet. So that's part of the reason I'm running too. I want to be that fighter to make sure everyone has a voice in my district.
Okay. Antonio Martinez, thanks for coming in.
You bet. Thank you.
The Voice of San Diego podcast is part of the Voice of San Diego podcast network. Visit voiceofsandiego.org/podcast to learn more about the Cura Chaos show about movers and shakers on both sides of the border, Beer Talk Radio, our business shows Startup Vault and I Made It in San Diego, and the rest of the shows in the network. If you like the show, go to voiceofsandiego.org and click the donate button. Or if you'd like to sponsor it, contact me at kinsey@vosd.org. That's KINSEE@vosd.org.